and thanks for tuning in today. I am Nicole Forbes with Dennis's 7Ds, and today we're talking about mounting indoor plants to wood. This is, not only is this kind of just a fun DIY project, great for winter time when you don't have as many things that you can do outside in the garden, and a really wonderful way to display plants in your home by either hanging them on the wall or displaying on tabletop or a coffee top with an interesting piece of wood. We have several different examples to kind of show today, and the instructions and kind of materials list for this project are all included and attached as a blog article or kind of as a link to this video. So the range of wood surfaces is the first thing that we're going to talk about. Then the kind of options as far as plant material to use, and then I'm going to demonstrate how this project is actually done. And so it's quite common that these days, of course, that we see mounted staghorn ferns. This is a moosehorn fern, which just has a slightly different look to a staghorn. But a staghorn fern is a variety of fern that is semi-epiphytic, which means that its native habitat is growing on the branches or trunks of trees or other surfaces. So if you've ever traveled to Hawaii or other tropical regions, you may have seen other epiphytic plants that grow on tree branches or in trees, and a really well-known example is most varieties of orchid. This is a Phalaenopsis orchid, and one of the classic characteristics of an epiphyte is that they often will send these aerial roots, so surface roots that leave the soil and actually stick out the sides of the container. So these are known as aerial roots since they grow in the air. And epiphytic plants have the ability to grow in kind of a very minimal soil condition, which also allows them the ability in many cases to go for periods between waterings without struggling or experiencing severe stress. The different wood surfaces that you may see that we can mount wood to include, as this staghorn or moosehorn is mounted to just a rough piece of raw cedar. So this is just plank wood like you would find maybe fence board, and that is perfectly fine. You want an untreated wood surface if possible, so that's a great option. And in order to create this hanging surface, a hole has been drilled through the wood itself, and then the hanger attached. So that's one kind of hanging option or hanging style. The other two that you may commonly see would be using cork wood. So this is cork, just like cork in a bottle, or cork boards that you have maybe above your desk. Cork wood is naturally harvested from trees, cork oaks, and the cork wood itself is lightweight, easy to work with, and as the plant grows, the cork wood provides kind of a rough surface, which is simulating again the natural environment that a plant would grow in. So it tends to give the plant a space for the roots to adhere to the surface. Cork usually has a concave shape, so the mounting can be a little bit more difficult on cork wood, but applying either nailing a nail in here and even just making a wider loop is possible, but you could also drill a hole through the cork wood. We just prefer to put a mounting hanger right on the back, and I'll show you kind of how we do that. Cork we have here at Dennis 7Ds in kind of an average size that looks great on the wall or on a tabletop, and I'm going to demonstrate attaching to cork a little bit later. This nice piece of wood is a hardwood scrap from furniture making. So probably maple. This is a heavier piece of wood. It is, really kind of cool and popular to have this live edge. So The beauty of this is showing that live edge of the wood. This piece of wood we could mount onto either directly like a vertical mount so that it just sat horizontally and displayed itself on a bookshelf or on a coffee table, or we could mount this one again and hang it on the wall, but paying attention to the fact that it's much heavier, we would need to give it a pretty substantial hanger so that it could support itself on the wall. And then a really fun and popular wood to mount plants to is driftwood. And driftwood, of course, is one of those things that has beauty all on its own, and is out there for kind of collecting. Rivers and lakes have great resources for driftwood, and of course the ocean. Now, if you go and collect your own driftwood or have your own driftwood collected, if it came from a salty body of water, it is best that you soak the driftwood for several times just to get as much of that salt out of the driftwood. So soaking it in water, changing the water, and soaking it again until it seems like it's had enough opportunity to purge that salt, because the salt contact with your plant could potentially cause some problems down the line. But driftwood comes in so many, again, unique shapes and sizes that what we'll look for in driftwood is little nooks to put the plant into. So this one has this perfect, I've already hammered some nails in, but this one has a perfect little crevice for a plant to rest in. But I could also see a really nice mount done in this angled section of the driftwood. So potentially we could do two on this piece. We could mount in different sections. And I even was noticing that it sort of stands up on its own. So again, we could mount at the base and have this really cool top. So lots of options when it comes to driftwood. So many different and unique pieces that you kind of make it up as you go along, just based off of the specimen wood that you have. Now, going again back to which plants are most appropriate for this project, certainly not plants that need extreme moisture or regular watering. I would not suggest using something like peace lily, spathiphyllum. I would not suggest using something like maidenhair fern, which is a little bit finicky with drying out. So sturdier, more drought-tolerant plants are ideal for this project. As I mentioned, the staghorn ferns, moosehorn ferns, those epiphytic ferns also include the footed ferns. So think about the rabbitfoot fern, the Virginia blue fern, the kangaroo paw fern. All of those are semi-epiphytic ferns where they kind of send little rhizomes over the soil surface and end up with sort of aerial roots again coming over the soil and over the edge. Those are great for mounting. Hoyas are another excellent plant to mount. The kind of growth habit of a Hoya is viney and elegant and looks great against wood surfaces. Hoyas also go dry, prefer to go dry between watering, so that makes them a really great candidate. And then other plants that we see, again, suitable, not only, as I mentioned, orchids, phalaenopsis, dendrobiums, several different varieties of orchids, philodendrons, epipremnums, and pothos are also great candidates. So we have an epipremnum here. We've got a philodendron lemon lime that would also be an excellent choice to mount. And all of these plants we know as pretty durable, pretty sturdy, and drought tolerant. The final one that I didn't bring in today is a couple of peperomias that do really well, especially the peperomia albifolia, marbles, and some of the larger leaf peperomias. One of the things about most varieties of peperomia is the plant itself doesn't like to be gotten wet. So the water, which could give it some problems, that would be the one caveat on a peperomia. And then another whole group of plants that do really well mounted are succulents. As long as you have, again, the bright light to keep the succulent happy, echeverias, string of pearls, string of dolphins, all of those trailing succulents, trailing jades, all of those are fantastic to mount. So the of mounting begins with a technique that is basically leading up to kokedama. And I say that only because kokedama is another DIY kind of plant crafty project that we will be showcasing in a couple of weeks. Right around Valentine's Day, we've got a class called Kokedama for Dynamic Duos, also known as Kokedama for Couples, if you want to do a date night type craft. Kokedama is essentially this. So kokedama is removing a lot of the soil from the original plant root ball, encasing it in a special blend of soil that we'll talk about, and then wrapping that soil ball with moss, and that is kokedama. So now a kokedama, normally it would be a little bit rounder, but I've got this shape to go onto my mount. So kokedama can just be appreciated as it is. They can be hung. They can sit in pretty little bowls and saucers. It's really like a form of bonsai that allows you to appreciate just the nature itself, the plant, the moss, without having a pot to kind of add a whole other element of decor and design. The mounting process is basically taking essentially a kokedama and then attaching it to a piece of wood. And the options, of course, for doing this range, and we're going to teach kind of the Dennis 7Ds way. If you see often for sale mounted staghorn ferns, usually mounted staghorn ferns are mounted in a way that's very kind of quick and efficient for growers to produce, and that is that the root ball, you can't really see on this other than maybe right here at the bottom, the root ball is attached to the wood by stapling a black mesh material over the roots to kind of hold it in. Usually this is like a shade cloth type material, similar to how you would buy like a bag of onions in that like red kind of netting bag. It's very much like that stuff. Now, early on, after mounting with that staple and mesh, you see the mesh for quite a while. With the staghorn ferns and the moosehorn ferns, the shield that the fern grows over time will grow to cover the original mounting material, so you don't see it as much, and that will kind of, again, make it look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. But until that happens, you're looking at a lot of that mounting base. So rather than looking at a lot of the mesh and things, we would prefer to use moss. So the next thing that we do, which is a little bit different, again, we don't staple gun, we use fishing line, and we use nails to attach the ball itself to the wood by kind of just wrapping around the nails in a method that secures it. So for starters, often the moss material that we use, the sphagnum moss, which is what you see kind of natural, greenish brown on the ball that I'm showing here, is just our Hiawatha green moss. So this is a natural dried green moss that's harvested out of the Pacific Northwest, kind of rainforest areas. It has a greenish brown color, and it isn't ever going to get like greener. It can get browner though, so it's also possible to use a moss that's color preserved, that has more of a sheet-like nature and a little bit of a natural dye that keeps it greener, and that is available as preserved sheet moss. So this company, Super Moss, makes a super moss that is great for this project. And it looks, I've got mine soaking so it is wet, but the color preserved sheet moss looks like this. So it's in a more cohesive piece that's easier to work with, and it's a kind of a fresher green versus the sphagnum moss that we show here, which isn't wet yet. When it's wet, it's easier to work with, but is more of a natural greenish brown color. So the steps for this project I'm going to take this Hoya as my example, is we begin by shaking a lot of the original soil off of the plant. So take it out of the pot. In order to do that, if you notice, I just squeeze the pot a couple of times to loosen everything up so that when I take it out, it's already kind of falling apart. And now just with a little bit more massaging, I don't want to take so much away that my plant starts to really crumble and fall apart. But just enough that, again, we've got some exposed roots. I'm going to set that down now, and we're going to exchange it for a soil that's got a little bit of a different property. And the soil property is a mixture of water holding and porous soil. So it's 50% peat moss to 50% bonsai soil. And well wetted, so adding water to that soil allows the mix to be wet enough to form a ball. So when you're mixing your soil at home, see how wet it is? You're going to mix it to the point where it's going to form a nice ball and hold together. A little more than I need here. So now, if you work that ball just a little bit, it'll get nice and smooth in your hands. This is the fun tactile part that makes you feel like a kid again, playing with mud pies. And this is where it's good to have maybe a plastic tablecloth and not a white tablecloth that you can get really dirty. And so now I have a nice ball in my hand. I'm going to kind of crack it in half, set one side down, grab my Hoya back, and just start to press my soil mix around that root ball and compress. So see, it is crumbling a little bit. So we just keep working it. Don't give up. And scoop a little bit more soil to patch the edges, and you want, as you crack that ball in half, now you want those kind of seams to work back together. So there, so you can kind of compress it. It's holding. Mostly holding. And once you've got a nice ball, you can set it aside, and then you're going to encase that ball in moss. So I find it easier to work with pre-wetted moss. And then you can just wring a little bit of the water out. The sheet moss is so nice because it's all in one piece, or you can use larger pieces to kind of patch together. Then I'm going to set my ball into the center of that moss and just pull it up around the edges. Just remove excess moss. And if your piece doesn't come all the way together and you have a little bit of dirt showing, you just patch it. So there's my little patch. I've got it pretty well covered. Now you're going to need to hold this with one hand now. And then you take fishing line. And this is about maybe 2 to 3 yards of fishing line. And I want to leave a tail at the end that I can tie back to when I'm finished. So I take like a 6-inch piece and just wrap it around my pinky so I can kind of keep track of it. Then the rest of the line, collect in my hand. And now I'm just going to wrap this ball like I would like a ball of yarn that has just fallen, and now I'm going to wrap it back up. You want some tension to hold everything together, so you're just pulling on the fishing line as you go. You want to make sure that you're passing under the ball as you go, and with fishing line, no one can see really how neat or messy or how many times we go around. You don't, of course, go over the top of the plant, so you don't cross over the center, that would damage the plant. And you try not to get yourself all tangled up in your plant, like I just did. Okay, always going in the same direction, around. And I'm close to the end here. All right, I'm close enough to the end that now we're gonna knot it. Don't worry if your ball is a little funny shaped in the beginning, because we can manipulate it back into a rounder shape, or really we're gonna maybe flatten one side of it so that it looks better against the wood. Now the fishing line, I'm just tying in a square knot at the end, so nice, tight. You see it's kind of funny shaped right now, so I'm gonna help round it out a little bit. Okay, we're gonna cut these ends, and now for this driftwood, for example, I have taken, I don't know, these are just like tacks, just kind of carpet nail looking tacks. Oh well. The nails, there they are. The nails are short, they get fatter towards the top, and they give me a nice little head to tie my line around. I've taken the original pot that I took the plant out of, and I use that to gauge the distance that I'd need to nail my nails into, and I just kind of starter put them on the wood. So I'm going to nail them in just a little bit more, this one at least. My tiny hammer works just as good as a big hammer. And now, with those nails in there, we're going to add our plant. And we want to think about how this is going to, I might try to have it like that, which means I like that look there. So now I'm going to leave it in place and use more fishing line. When you're doing this portion, you could just leave your line attached so that you have, you know, an unlimited amount. But I'm going to just go ahead and take it off and get the nails out of the way. Show you what I'm doing. Just going to knot around one of the nails. Again, just a little square knot, but leaving a tail that I can tie back to. Knot. Okay, and with this remaining line, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 nails. I'm going to go back and forth from nail to nail to nail, holding this securely onto the wood. So I'll show you my first one, and then I'm going to turn it around so I can do it more easily. I'm going to take it over to the nail right here. Go around the nail, secure it, and I usually just go back to the original before I pick a different nail. So back over to where we started. Around that nail. And now I can go to another nail. Let me flip it over. Do this a little quicker. And then I'll show you how we do it on cork as well. Oh, there's my other nail. Like so. You can hear that I'm using some tension on the line, but you pull too hard and you might break the line, so just be cautious of being too heavy-handed with the line.
Can we move this big fern out of the way out front?
Of course.
Thank you. Much better.
So, and honestly, I think I may have nailed in a little tight. So I'm having to move my moss to find my nails. There's the other one. There it is. Now you could, on a driftwood piece like this, we have a bunch of like hooks and lumps. You could just tie around the driftwood. You could tie around the little hooks and bits of driftwood if you wanted and not try to put the nails in. But I like the look better of it nailed, and I feel that it's a little bit more secure. So it's not that much effort to hammer a couple of nails in. Sorry about the downtime here. Gotta secure it. Now, when we're using the cork, right, there we go. Last one. And then you can just knot it back to that original nail that we started with. Just come out a little bit. Back. And then cut all your line, all your extra. So here is our finished mount on driftwood. And very similar for the cork. So this piece of cork, I started by attaching just a simple frame style holder or hook to the back of it. And then I decided, before I did that, I decided which way I wanted it to hang on the wall. And now I have put in some nails. You can't see because they're so dark that they blend in with the wood, but the same general idea. I put nails just slightly larger around than the size of the pot that I took the plant out of. I'm going to use this epiprenum, and now I have already kind of smushed the back, so I've flattened this so that it can be better displayed against the cork itself. But I've decided that I wanted it to flick out just a little bit. So I had it mounted like this, but now I actually want to mount it like this. So I'm going to flatten the bottom a little bit more. See how you can flatten the bottom? Yeah, and I'm going to attach it like so. So, same thing. Got those nails in. I hid my line. Fishing line comes in different strengths or weights. So usually I think I work with 30-pound. That way you can give it a little yank or pull without it totally breaking really easily on you. But whatever you've got is also good. Just kind of be attentive to the tension that you can give it. Again, square knot or just a regular tie around one of the nails leaving yourself with enough tail to tie back to, so there's like a 6-inch tail. Now, making sure that I'm happy this time with the angle of my plant, I'm going to hold it up just a little bit as I start to wrap. Yeah. Oh, I pulled my nail right out because the cork wood, it's kind of easy to do that. It's so soft that often you don't even need the hammer. And one thing about fishing line is that once you lose it, you lose it. So it's always good to have plenty. Get this. Try to tie it again. Alright folks, I'm not great with gloves. Done the dirty part anyways, so. Around. Knot it. One more time for good measure. Now, that's the look. We'll go over to this and see, see my nail. Around the nail, no pressure, back over to the nail I started on. Actually, I go up to the top nail. Keeping that angle like I want it. Down to this nail. Back to this one. There's no real system. You just, until you feel like it's secure, you're just gonna go from nail to nail. I have 4 nails, you could put 5 nails or 6 nails. This one again. And this last wrap, that nail, with my little trusty hammer, can pound the nails in just a little bit more. Which will get it a little bit tighter. Then at the end, and just knot the 2 pieces under one of your nails. Again, trim your ends. Here we go. We've got our lovely little secure, dirt shake, secure plant. To hydrate this, we're going to either lay it down into a sink, a basin, a bucket. Could go vertically into a bucket if you don't have anything wide enough to lay the whole plant board into. Ideally, we're going to submerge it for 20 or 30 minutes. And depending on the plant, the exposure that it's in, and the time of year, this may be done maybe weekly or 10 days in the summer at the peak of the growing season, or every 2.5 to 3 weeks in the winter time in lower light and lower water need plants. The exact same concept is how we would attach to the plank wood or to the scrap wood. So again, using your guide, choosing the spot that you would like the plant to rest whether you want it to spill over or whether you're going to mount on a horizontal surface and simply have your plant displayed on the wood. Mocking up, nailing in just kind of ahead of time and getting a lot of your supplies laid out before you get your hands covered in mud or all tangled up in line can really help. But the soil mix that you make is going to come out of bags that will give you multiple opportunities to do this project. So either you can make several at a time to really get better and better, or make with friends and family and have a really fun and creative craft project that works out on your back porch or in your garage. It's great for social distancing and just a lot of fun. Looks great in the house as well. So as always, thanks for watching. We will answer questions after that we haven't been able to answer here on the video, and we'll see you next week. Happy gardening.